I like that. I like that.
I'm Aries and I'm addicted to not calming.
That's perfect. Good, good. We gotta let it all out so we can work on our
We
issues.
have to hit rock bottom so we can build up from there.
Exactly. Just curious, since we're still waiting, does anyone here like play? I don't know. Like I know a lot of people are here for League, but some people are here for Valorant. Is
We
there any
have
like other
we have
games,
at
anything like
least
that?
we have 3 Valorant right now.
Okay, okay.
We should have 4.
I'm gonna keep things super general, because I want it to be applicable to every game. But um, I can provide specifics for at least Valorant and League, if that helps for like certain points, because I'm more familiar with those games than other games. Um, but all of it should be, you know, pretty much universally applicable. I'm gonna go ahead and just start screen sharing right now to make sure that when we actually start, everyone's able to get in. Let me know if there are any issues with like actually being able to see the screen.
Looks good on my end.
Okay, good, good.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. It's about 7:05 right now, so I want to make sure you guys have enough time for Zaga to give his presentation, and then also for you guys to ask some questions at the end of it all, if you guys have any. But thank you for coming for this first seminar that we're hosting. Um, Welcome to the St. Louis University server as well. If you have any students that are interested in joining the university or learning more about the school, definitely invite them here. It's a public place, so anyone can really join and kind of participate and hang out with the club. We have a lot of activities in the Discord itself that we want to be available for everyone, not just at our university to use. But these seminars, I've noticed that there's a lot of different topics that aren't actually covered within esports that can really help you out in terms of either coaching or team play or things like that, or even just like the health portion of esports is not really covered under a lot of either universities or teams yet. So I really want to be able to give that uh, resource for you guys. And it just so happens that the St. Louis University League of Legends coach, Nicholas Roche, who's gonna be giving these presentations, has a lot of knowledge not just about high level League of Legends or gameplay, but also just about how to maintain your well-being within esports, whether or not that's with a team or just yourself personally. So today, we're talking about high-level team communication, but in the future, I really want to be able to branch out to things like your preventing things like hand injuries, or even keeping your eyesight super well, or even just like the general body health. I know like Zaga is also a personal coach, or a personal trainer, so he's been helping a lot of people with a lot of their health related issues and keeping them on track with plans. And those are things that I want to be able to bring to you guys in the future. But for today, we're just going to be talking specifically about high-level team communication. And this is including many different types of games. So the main reason why we brought this up today is because of our Valorant team having troubles with some communication issues and things like that. But this also branches out to multiple different games like Rocket League, League of Legends, and even some of the sometimes the less team-oriented games like Smash. Things like how you're supposed to coach your team and things like that. So I'm going to leave it up to Nicholas to be able to start the presentation and give you guys a great seminar.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Zaga. For those of you who don't know me, I play a lot of League of Legends. I've been a challenger jungler for about 5 years. I also work with C9 on their training grounds program. So primarily I work with talented high school age kids who have collegiate, academy, or LCS ambitions. So it's pretty fun stuff. I've noticed that a lot of topics in esports aren't really covered that heavily. A lot of coaches tend to focus exclusively on in-game things, strategies, callouts, mechanical focus stuff. So it should be cool to, spend some time going over topics that kind of get pushed to the side or ignored altogether. So today's presentation is going to be high-level team communication. And we're going to have a quick Q&A session at the end. So try to hold questions until then if you can. But it should be brief presentation and then Q&A. So first off, what are good comms? Good comms are always clear, concise, and valuable. Those are 3 aspects that are pretty much universal with anything related to good comms. You're always going to be able to, point those out in anything someone says if it's what would classify as a good comm. To double down on that clear aspect, anything a player is trying to convey should be 100% apparent immediately. You should never be left like wondering, what does that actually mean? Like, what my teammate just said, I actually have no idea. I need to like think about this deeper. That's not the point of comms at all. Comms should never be confusing or easily misinterpreted. Nothing they say should ever leave you wondering, oh, is that guy here or here? Should I be doing this or this? It's very, very, nothing that leaves you kind of up in the air should be said. Also, that means remove guesswork. Comms should always be accurate. Making a call out that is objectively wrong can be game breaking. Let's say you're playing League of Legends and you're just guessing, like that guy used flash, and you're not positive and you end up being wrong. That can actually be a game breaking mistake on its own. You might trick a teammate into making a play that's actually a really bad play, when in reality, from their perspective, it seemed like a great play to make. You don't want to mislead your team unintentionally. So if you have to guess, just be honest with your team and say, I'm not positive. This is what I think happened. Worst case. And also keep in mind, tone of voice can be equally as valuable or damaging as the actual words being used. You need to use tone to convey severity. So tone should be a tool that you use. If you're in a situation that is, drastic, you need help right away. Let's say you're playing League of Legends and you need help under your turret, you're being dove by 3 people. You need to use tone, make sure that your team knows it's, something that needs addressing right away and not something that needs to be ignored or can be ignored. And the opposite goes too. So, don't act super calm or don't act super panicked when situation isn't very severe, you're going to end up tricking your team into making plays that are just bad, tricking your team into investing resources into helping out in a situation that doesn't need more help, or just not helping out in a situation that does need immediate attention. So never misuse tone. Always make sure that your tone is appropriate for the situation at hand. You need to make sure comms are concise. Multitasking is a myth. Long-winded comms during games force players to rapidly switch mental processes, contributing to mental fatigue, which while keeping them from playing at 100%. So multitasking isn't actually a real thing. Your brain just constantly switches between tasks over and over and over again. That's why you'll hear a lot of people say, clear out your desk when you're working, when you're playing games. Clean desk will contribute to better focus, better energy. And that's actually true because anytime you slightly lose attention on what you're doing, anytime you lose focus and focus on something else for a second, you're using glycogen in your brain to switch processes back and forth and back and forth. That's not ideal. The same thing goes for comms. When you're constantly talking or when you're constantly listening in game and you have to focus on what you're saying, what your teammates are saying, you're switching back and forth in processes. You're using glycogen in your brain. You're going to fatigue. And while you're listening, while you're talking, you're not actually going to be able to focus entirely on what you're doing, which is pretty evident when you're playing other games. You could notice that if someone phone calls you and you have to have a full conversation during a game you're playing or during any work you're doing, you're probably not going to perform too well on it. You're not going to be able to focus too well on it. So try to keep multitasking to a minimum. Keep comms short, convey information in as few words as possible. Anything you say should be very, very short, should be a couple seconds. And to help out with that, you need to develop your in-game vocabulary. Take time to learn every important call out, utilize abbreviations. If you're playing League of Legends, you probably don't want to take the time to say Blade of the Ruin King. You probably want to say Bork. Same thing in League of Legends. If you want to describe, a call out for a location, you probably want to use the word pixel bush or the words pixel bush rather than saying, hey, go ward that bush. It's in river. It's to the right of this wall. It's kind of like 3/4 up the river. It just takes too long. It's not efficient. You're distracting your teammates. You're distracting yourself. Make sure you do take time to just really, really develop that vocabulary, make things faster, make things efficient. Don't shoutcast your games. Your teammates don't need to hear a play-by-play for everything you do. It really doesn't help. It's going to distract them. It's going to distract you. If you're saying, hey, I'm walking forward, I'm going to hit this guy. I'm going to hit this guy again. Oh, no, I missed. I missed again. I hit this guy. You're not adding any value. You're taking away from actual effective comms that someone else might be putting out. And you're, again, just distracting everyone. So never shoutcast during your game. All comms should be valuable. All comms should have value. If there's no value to something being said, it can only impact your game negatively. And value comes in different forms. So information, strategic planning, and morale. Information, it could be like, this person is here. This person is tagged. I have this much gold until I have this item. I can't afford this gun for Valorant. I need someone to buy. This person bought this weapon. Their econ isn't so great. Just like basic things to convey information quickly to your teammates. Strategic planning, so planning something multiple minutes ahead of time. So for League of Legends, that might be setting up objectives, planning out where you're going to place wards, set up vision lines, conveying to your teammates, this is how we're going to play the game for the next few minutes and what we ultimately want to achieve 3 minutes from now, 4 minutes from now, 5 minutes from now, even longer than that, or even team morale. Examples of that would be like celebrating. Like if you make a really good play or your teammate makes a really good play, go ahead and kind of, celebrate with them a little bit. You can have fun with it. You can be positive. It's going to contribute to team morale. It's going to make your team feel better. It's going to make you feel better. Everyone's going to play better because of it. Celebrating is never bad unless you're excessively celebrating and it's taking away from being able to actually focus on the rest of the game, or there's something important going on and you're not able to hear the rest of the comms going on because people are just yelling. So celebrating when something good happens is absolutely okay. Negative comms when something bad happens are not okay and will absolutely destroy team morale. So an example of that would be, maybe you are playing Valorant, you lose a duel against someone and you're like, man, I'm so bad. Or your teammate loses a duel against someone and you flame them. Don't bring those up. There's a time and place for that sometimes, and it's definitely not during game. If you're talking about how bad someone played or how someone did something wrong, or just generally kind of complaining about the game state, the only thing you're contributing to is your chance of losing the game. It's really not helping anyone. It only can have negative value. Understand your players and teammates. Everyone wants to win. No one is out to get you most of the time. Occasionally someone might actually be out to get you, but we're assuming that we're in a competitive team environment here. No one's going to troll you. No one's griefing you. Everyone's trying their best. Everyone wants to win. Players need to focus on their own gameplay. Flaming and demoralizing teammates is the fastest way to lose a game. I've seen too many games where teams have giant leads, and then all of a sudden someone flames a teammate, someone complains about game state, someone's super negative, and instantly that team is going to play way worse. They're going to make more mistakes. They're going to make a game-breaking play. The game is over. And it all stems off of just bad comms. If you're going to say something negative, it's better to literally not say anything at all. Positive comms will only help win games. Negative comms will only help lose games. Mistakes are learning opportunities and are unavoidable. Even the best players and coaches will make mistakes. Stay motivated, take the losses gracefully, use those moments to grow and improve. Everyone makes mistakes. Players make mistakes, coaches make mistakes. The best players in the world make mistakes. Faker regularly gets down on himself really bad. If you're familiar with Faker, it's one of the League of Legends players in the world. He will routinely, after games, talk about how poorly he played, despite being recognized as potentially the best player of all time. So you need to understand that you're going to make mistakes. Your teammates are going to make mistakes. Take those L's. It's okay. Use them as growth moments. Everyone takes criticism differently. Get to know your players and teammates. Learn what resonates with them. Some people won't respond well to direct criticism. Some people will respond really well to direct criticism. It really depends from an individual basis. So you need to, find out what helps people, what's not going to help your teammates, what gets them down, what motivates them. Figure out what works, stick to that. You're probably working with these players on a regular basis. You probably see them or talk to them all the time. It's going to help in the long run to figure this out sooner rather than later. And constructive criticism should be saved for appropriate times, not shared during games. Anytime you have any sort of negative thing to say, but you can kind of turn it into constructive criticism, it should never, ever be said during game. If you're telling someone, hey, you should have done this, there's not any actual value in game that you're going to get from that, because they can't go back and change what just happened. And if anything, it might even just tilt them during game. What you want to do is save that, put it to the side, bring it up at a more appropriate time. So that could be during practice, it could be post game, assuming you don't have like another game right after, or you're playing a set. Just make sure that you're not bringing things up at the wrong time, because it really is going to hurt things drastically. So a fun quote to go along with that is, success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. It's from Winston Churchill. And tilt. Tilt originated as a poker term for when a player becomes emotionally charged and is no longer able to consistently make decisions optimally. Tilt will drastically reduce your chances of winning games if not addressed. Players should take time to identify what tilts them and how they can prevent becoming tilted. I highly, highly recommend sitting your players down if you're the coach, or if you're a player, just sitting yourself down and thinking about what tilts you, why you become tilted in game, when you find that you play the best and you're able to prevent being tilted, and sort of come up with a routine, come up with some sort of habit to keep you playing at your peak, to prevent kind of entering that emotionally charged state. Because when you do get into that state, you're going to have problems actually making good plays. You're going to make mistakes all the time. Nothing is going to pay off how it normally would. So, avoiding being tilted is absolutely optimal. Anything you can do to prevent that, you should do. And external factors can heavily, heavily impact mental state. A teammate making a minor mistake will play a much less impactful role in your mental state than not getting adequate sleep and ignoring nutrition. You should be focusing heavily on getting a good night's sleep every night. That's going to affect your gameplay more than actually, adding in an extra game every day. Same goes for nutrition. If you're not getting proper nutrition, your brain's not going to function properly. Your body's not going to function properly. You might enter mental fatigue earlier than normal. Your eyes might fatigue earlier than normal. Your body might feel just off one day and you're going to play off because of it. You need to make sure that all external factors are taken care of. Same thing goes for things outside of sleep and nutrition. It could be that you are too stressed, you've got a lot of work on your plate, you've got some sort of issue with personal relationships going on. It could be literally anything. You need to make sure that everything is kind of taken care of outside of game in order to be playing at peak in game. And avoid playing while tilted if possible. Take a break, do something you enjoy, get some rest. Very, very often, I'll find that players will just not take a break when they're tilted, and they'll end up playing worse and worse and just staying kind of emotionally charged way, way longer than they originally would have. And they'll lose a lot of games because of it. And that can also contribute to, drastically negatively impacting their mental state. So that's not good. We want to prevent that as well as we can. The second that you can identify when you're tilted, you need to just kind of take a step away, if possible, in that moment, and wait until you're out of that state to kind of get back into things. And organized communication. You want to delegate in-game communication roles for your team. These can be as general or as specific as you want them to be. So, Valorant has certain roles. Like you might have an in-game leader, a co-in-game leader. You might have lurker, entry, support. All of these people need to be kind of addressing different aspects of communication, gathering different types of information, and kind of letting their teammate know ahead of time what part they're in charge of, what types of information they're in charge of. That's going to help a lot, because when it comes down to it, if nobody's sure who's in charge of what in communication, a lot of things are going to fall through the cracks, and a lot of plays are going to be made where it might be a split play. So maybe just half of the players on your team are committing to a play because the other people just don't think it's a good play. And when it comes down to it, that's not optimal. It's better for all of the players on your team to commit to a bad play than for half of your players to commit to a good play and the other half to just not commit at all. The other upside to this is when you assign communication roles to your team, it's going to help to prevent excess responsibility from falling on one player. So a lot of the time, if someone doesn't assign a role, a player might take it upon themselves to kind of be in charge of everything in terms of communication. And one, that's not possible. They're not going to be able to keep up with all of the information coming in. A lot of the things are going to fall through the cracks. And it's also a lot of stress for just one player to be in charge of everything going on in game. You need to make sure that they're kind of distributed in a way that makes sense for your team. And the best way to do that is when your team kind of comes together, ask your players, ask your teammates what roles they're comfortable with and taking in comms. Find out what they might be interested in kind of contributing to those comms, and distribute those roles accordingly. You might find that someone is more suited for a direct, like in-game leader role. You might find someone is more suited for a supportive role that's just going to help feed information to someone who's making decisions. It's really going to depend from person to person and from team to team and on team identity as a whole. And then while specific information, callouts, plays might be different from game to game, this can be applied universally. So overall, this is a practice that you can use for any game, or at least any team game. If you have a team and there is information in that game, which every game has, I can't think of a single game that doesn't have relevant in-game information. You need to assign roles to each player. And you can kind of come up with those as you see fit. And then lastly, team environment. Team environment is an important factor both in and out of game. A good team environment will contribute greatly to player motivation and receptiveness. If your players just hate being around their team and they're not enjoying the game, they're not enjoying practice, they're not enjoying scrims, they're not going to feel motivated. They're not going to practice outside of game. They're not going to try to communicate. Improvement is going to be a slow process if it even happens at all. You need to make sure that people are having fun, people are enjoying their time, everyone gets along. At least contribute to making it a positive environment kind of in any way you can. So keep things fun, devote some time toward fun activities that will help to promote team bonding. That's important. If your team just never feels like a team, it's going to be really, really rough to move forward and make improvements as a team. You might be able to make individual improvements with each player, but you're never going to be able to move that team forward as a group and as a cohesive unit. Get to know your players and teammates. Practicing games are exponentially more enjoyable when everyone is comfortable and friendly with each other. And lastly, hold yourself accountable for your own personal growth and success. That goes for both players and coaches. Coaches always have improving to do. Players always have improving to do. While someone might be, helping you along and acting as support and a resource for you, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're in charge of your growth. It just means that they're there to help you out. You're always in charge of your own growth, your own success. You're in charge of what you contribute to the team. If you're not contributing enough to the team, that doesn't fall on anyone else. And if someone else isn't contributing enough to the team, that also falls on them. It doesn't mean that you need to flame them or anything. It just means that you need to kind of work on as a unit, and understand where everyone's responsibilities lie. So that's actually it for the direct presentation, because I wanted to leave a lot of time for Q&A type stuff. So if anyone does have any questions, I would be happy to answer them related to anything in the presentation. Could be anything even outside of the presentation.
And we'll be taking questions in the text to voice channel. It should be right above the Event VC voice channel. So go ahead and type your questions. Zaga will read it from there. He'll be reading the questions straight off for the VOD as well. So go ahead and just start typing away if you guys have anything. But like Zaga said, that's the end of the actual presentation itself. So we're just gonna go ahead with the Q&A.
I mean, again, it could be anything outside the presentation too. If you've got any like general questions um, about anything regarding like health or anything about anything regarding in-game aspects outside of communication, I can briefly touch on those, but it won't be like super detailed because we are going to do presentations in the future that will hit definitely more in depth on topics like that. You mentioned assigning roles for different types of communication. Is that true in all games? I know that it is common to have a shot caller in Overwatch, but is it necessary to assign communication roles in smaller teams like Rocket League that only has 3 people? I would say yes and no. It definitely depends on the game, and it depends on what information is available in the game. So for Rocket League, for example, you might want to kind of assign someone who is in charge of actually, saying what plays you guys are going to go for, who's going to rotate, um, calling kind of strategy type things during the game. So I'm not super familiar with Rocket League specifically, but you might want to have someone saying whether or not you guys are fully committing to a play, whether you're backing off from a play, um, calling for someone to rotate for them because they're going on offense and they're going to go take a shot or something. Anything along those lines. There are plenty of there's plenty of communication going on in Rocket League without assigning roles. So a way to make it just more concise and more organized is to make sure that everyone has an actual role regarding comms and regarding what information is coming in and going out. So you're obviously from higher tier of competition. In collegiate, there's a lot of use what you have when it comes to the skill level of players. What is your best advice for trying to grow a more competitive environment seen within our school to foster more talent and better quality of players, to therefore make the team's programs better talent-wise? So a lot of things you can do. One, you can work on individual player talent. Your 2 priorities as a coach are 1, to move the individuals forward, and then 2, to move the team forward. And the team can't move forward without moving the individuals forward, and the individuals kind of need to be on the same page with each other. Um, so when it comes down to it, if you don't have, necessarily super high ranks to work with, that's totally okay. Work on getting those players to improve individually, but also work on the sort of intangible aspects, work on things outside of game, like communication, for example. You could have a really low rank player who is just absolutely perfect with communication. And you could have a really high rank player who is just not good at communicating at all. And a player who is slightly lower rank but is an excellent communicator is always going to be more valuable than a player who might be a little bit higher rank but just can't communicate whatsoever or only contributes negatively to team comms. Any other tricks to not have tilted players mid-game besides encouraging words? Definitely address what makes you tilted. So like we kind of addressed on that one side, outside of game, sit down individually, reflect on what makes you tilted in game and what contributes to your tilting outside of game. Make sure that all of the external factors are taken care of. You're eating well, you're sleeping well. Like there's a good comment right here. It says take deep breaths. That's absolutely true. Take deep breaths. Make sure that you're kind of aware that it's not a big deal. It is a game. While it might be competitive, while that game might matter in the moment, uh, contributing to a kind of frantic mental state isn't going to help. And then we have, how can you become a better listener? Sometimes I feel like teammates can make good callouts, but I just accidentally tune it out. That's something that you have to work on individually. It's something that you're going to need to kind of like with tilt. You can sit down and identify why you're not able to focus too well. It could be that you're not operating on a lot of sleep, you're not eating well, you somehow are getting too lost in the game, too focused on um, everything else going on. You need to actively make an effort to kind of tune in to what teammates are saying. Like I touched on before, you can't actually multitask. So the reason that some people can't focus is because you can't actually do both tasks at once. You're either going to be fully playing the game or fully listening, and you're going to be rapidly switching back and forth. You need to clear comms. If your team comms are as cleared as possible and only valuable information is going through, you're not going to have to switch processes quite as often. And then when you do have to switch and when you do have to focus on what people are saying, that's when you have to actively put effort into tuning in, to paying attention to not just what you're doing, but what your teammates are saying, because that's ultimately going to help you as a player as well. Could you talk about what things to do to avoid burnout? Don't overly practice. Some teams will practice like 7 days a week. While that sounds like a good idea, it's not. You're going to get a lot of mental fatigue out of that. It's kind of like working out. When you're working out, a lot of people who start working out and might not know too much about how fat loss and how gaining muscle works will say, stuff like no days off and they'll go to the gym every day. That's not good. You need to allow time for your body to rest. And that goes for working out, that goes for fitness, that goes for esports. You need to give your body time to rest. You need to give your mind time to rest. The same way that you're working out your body when you're in the gym, you're kind of working out your mind when you're constantly in intense, stressful games. Like a weird kind of fun fact / example for that is studies have found that high-level chess players and high-level League of Legends players can burn up to like 250 calories in an intense high-level match, and that's just off stress alone. So there is a lot of stress that builds up when you're playing these games, and if you're not addressing outside factors and you have that stress, you are going to burn out. You need to limit practice time to only what is actually effective and build in rest time. Let's see. I think there was another question here. It may have disappeared.
The stuff that Zaga was talking about with the having good nutrition, having good sleep, those are also things that we're going to be discussing in future seminars as well. So you can kind of go off more of a general plan about what those things look like.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to do a presentation at some point, focus mostly on health aspects, making sure that your setup is optimized so that you're not encountering eye fatigue, you're not encountering wrist injuries, back injuries. You're able to play at your peak all the time in terms of focus. Since you mentioned practice time, is there likely a best amount of practice time in a setting? That's going to vary. There's never going to be an exact best amount of practice or time. Sorry. That's going to be extremely variable from team to team. It's going to depend on how long each practice is, how much people have going on outside of their practice. So, if you have work or if you have school and you have other clubs, other sports, anything like that going on, it's going to contribute to the overall amount of stress that you're encountering. You can only do so many things at once. So, like people talk about, stretching themselves too thin at points. You need to make sure that the practice time is built around the time that you have available, the time that the players and the coach have available. Definitely don't practice every day in a week. You want to limit that to probably 5 days maximum plus a game day, but maybe even less than that, like 4 days plus game day. But again, it really is going to depend from player to player based on external stress, based on what they're able to handle individually in terms of just mental state, because we do want to, again, prevent tilt, prevent fatigue, prevent burnout. You need to make sure that we're not contributing toward those mental aspects, and spend some time really setting up an optimized practice schedule. Playing other games overall helpful because it gets players out of the stress of their own game. Just playing their normal game, the needed amount plus the extra eye and handwork play a detrimental role. It can be super helpful. I always recommend to players I work with to play other games, unless they really don't want to, because it's only going to help the player if they want to play other games. If they hate playing other games, it's going to contribute to burnout. But for example, some of the best players that play League of Legends come from other games like Magic the Gathering, like StarCraft. Some games might not even be like computer-based games or video games at all. A lot of these games contribute to mental aspects of the game. So, if you're forced to think about things that might not be super relevant to your own game, when you play another game, it can contribute greatly to improving at other games. On top of that, with the health aspect, you want to make sure that you're not just overly playing whatever other game you're adding in. So if you've already got a lot of practice going on and a lot of work, a lot of schoolwork, and you're adding in like 12 hours of another game just randomly, then it's probably not so beneficial. But a few hours here and there is totally okay. Again, you do want to try to make sure your setup is optimized too. So I highly recommend getting a nice chair that's going to support your back. You don't necessarily actually need lumbar support. That's a wee bit of a scam, but make sure that your setup is nice. Make sure that you have the lights on while you're playing. That'll help to contribute to avoiding eye fatigue and being able to focus on what you're looking at the entire time, as well as mental fatigue. So you want at least extra lights in your peripheral vision, but ideally you want the lights on at all times while you're playing. I also highly recommend switching your computer or your devices into like night mode, or setting a schedule where they switch into night mode, where the light isn't so just blaringly in your face, starting at given points of the night when you're trying to wind down, and that's going to contribute to better sleep overall, better quality sleep and more sleep. I warm up on Rocket League to play Valorant. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. I think that's fine. I find that higher APM games will contribute to mechanical games pretty heavily. So, like, when I'm about to play League of Legends in a competitive setting, I like to play games that require me to quickly react to a lot of things at once and accurately click a lot of things at once. And that's going to help me to click more accurately, focus a little bit better, and have slightly better reaction times in my game that I'm playing right after. Rocket League won't contribute the exact same way with APM, but it might kind of get you into the at least right mindset competitively. The APM aspect isn't really there, but if it works for you, then it works. Another comment there, Osu. Osu definitely works for that. I love to play Osu before matches. I love to play Gunzi before matches because those are super, super high APM. They require you to react pretty fast. Those games are going to get you into good shape right before matches. But that could be literally any game that you enjoy playing, that gets you into the right mindset, that requires some sort of reaction speed. It's going to work pretty well as a warm-up. Same thing goes for actually inside games too. Like when you're in your game, you should be constantly kind of clicking random keys that don't really do much. And it doesn't make sense when you kind of say it out. It kind of sounds dumb. but it is really helpful. You'll see a lot of professional players just randomly spamming keys all the time on their keyboard when they're playing like League of Legends or other games like that. Or maybe when they're playing Valorant or CS:GO, they're just constantly changing their weapon for no reason when they're in their before the round is actually started. The reason for that is to keep the APM up, to keep them kind of focused, to keep their keyboard and mouse accuracy as good as possible throughout the game without kind of hitting any sort of lag points. Do you work on comms in practice, such matches and scrims, or is that only handled outside of game? Absolutely set aside time in practices to work on the more intangible stuff and the stuff that is outside of game. It's going to contribute a lot toward playing better during other practices and in your actual games. Players tend to not be that motivated sometimes, depending on the player, to putting in extra work outside of practice. So if you set aside that time and it's structured and they have dedicated time toward working on these other aspects that aren't just in-game topics, they're going to find a lot of value just from the hour or two that you spend on it. Even if it seems really basic, like when you're presenting to an entire team, you might have 5 players where 3 of the players know most of what you're going over, but 2 of them don't. That's what you're looking for. You want to move the individuals forward, catch them up to each other so that you can move the team forward eventually. So if you're able to catch those players up who don't necessarily know everything the other players know, you can go over topics as basic as possible for both in-game topics and out-of-game stuff. Because when you do get them caught up, it's going to be that much easier to move that team forward at a significant pace. Is there a best way to work on comms? Like, is it best to talk about the way to communicate while watching gameplay or just talking to the team generally? It will depend on the team again. So if you want to, you could turn it into activities. Like there are plenty of mini games you can play in like Valorant, in League of Legends, where you might even like take away someone's UI or kind of even blindfold them in game and then have their teammates kind of pilot them around. Almost like if you've ever played a game in real life where you're playing where you're wearing a blindfold and you're having someone kind of say like forward, 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 left, right, step back. Types of games like those can be super fun. It can make working on comms not so monotonous, which is nice because if you're just sitting there and talking forever, sometimes your players are going to get bored. They might lose focus. They might not be super into whatever's going on. You can definitely do actual full presentations, and I highly recommend that. But I would say include other things as well. So activities, little mini games, anything that's going to help them kind of feel more engaged. If you've had a bad day or just aren't in the best mood, what do you do to make sure you're in a good mindset once you're in game? I try to take a break at that point, actually before the game, if I play at all. So I prefer to, let's say, if I get home from like work or school or anything like that, and I'm feeling just really down, I'm feeling tired, I take a little break. I kind of escape from everything that's going on. Maybe I'll get some food, maybe I'll get some caffeine. Anything that genuinely just kind of helps me feel kind of put together throughout the day. Those will help you kind of get back into the right mindset. If you find that you can't get back into the right mindset, it's better to actually just not play if you have the option. But if you have scrims, if you have practice, if you've got a tournament or anything like that coming up, and you don't have the option to just not play that day, just get in there, do what you can. Try to understand that, you know, your team is there to support you. It's not all on you. If you're having a bad day, they might be able to help you kind of feel a little bit better. And hopefully, everyone who's kind of playing a game somewhat competitively at least somewhat enjoys that game. So, when you kind of enjoy what you're doing and enjoy the people you're around, it's going to help to kind of counteract that bad day. What should I do mid game if me and my teammate are not on the same page and are hindering each other more than supporting? That's something you want to bring up after game. It's not something you want to bring up during game. That's something you kind of want to table for the time being and just bring it up at a more appropriate time. What you can do is, assign those roles that we talked about. Make sure that someone is the clear leader of like shot calling in that instance, so that if there is any confusion, any disagreement, you're able to commit fully to the play that someone says or that someone calls for. Because at the end of the day, if people start just not committing to plays, if nobody's calling for plays, it's not going to work out that well. You're not going to play as a team. You're not going to be a cohesive unit. And if you have any concerns with that, bring it up during practice time. Because if you bring it up during scrims, if you bring it up during games, it's really, really going to demotivate people. I was once told to do something you can be successful at, like folding laundry. Sounds weird, but it helps sometimes. It absolutely does. Another one that really helps is like cleaning your room. So, a lot of people will be really busy. They'll be under a lot of stress. They'll neglect kind of basic activities like that, and they'll be stressed because of it too. It will only contribute to the stress. What you want to do is take some time, focus on those activities that do help you kind of de-stress, that do declutter your life a little bit. So, doing laundry helps a lot. Cleaning your room helps a lot. Organize something that needs organizing. It feels good to get those tasks done. It feels good to know that you're successful at whatever you're doing. So you're not kind of demotivating yourself because you're feeling not so confident in whatever you're doing. Just find a task that is easy, it's manageable, and it's worth your time. If you're tilted, just exercise and come back refreshed. That helps a lot too. A lot of people will find that exercise really does kind of help them escape their daily lives and get back into things feeling better. One really cool thing about exercise, when you enjoy exercise, is that you'll help to actually build new neurons. And there are not a whole lot of things that do that in life. In general, you're kind of stuck with the amount that you have. Just kind of making small changes here and there. But if you genuinely enjoy exercise and you exercise regularly, you build new neurons and you start kind of reacting faster. You start, operating more efficiently from the mental perspective. It just really, really helps to have a sort of exercise program in place.
Awesome, guys. I think it seems like there are no more questions. But Zaga and I are definitely around this Discord. If you guys have our DMs too, just shoot us a message if you have any more questions. We can definitely help out. We don't have another seminar planned just yet. I'll release that date within the coming month or so. It probably will be closer to the end of next month. But we'll release those dates and we'll release the topic pretty soon. But thank you so much. It was a pretty successful start for the meeting. Thank you so much for Zaga specifically for leading this seminar, and I hope you guys enjoyed it and are looking forward to more of these in the future.
Yeah, thank you for coming, everyone.
Yep. Talk to you guys later. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Saga.
No problem.
Poggers.
And Chu, I love you, Chu.
I love you too, JP.
Thank you.